I am your host, Keith Andrew, and our special guest today is Lawrence Chau. And I also want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
Chow time, Lawrence Chau.
Starting off, like I said, it's a normal conversation. And for our listeners who want to know what uncensored is, uncensored is my way to show people that even with a learning disability, I can still overcome controversy and reach my goals in life, and at the same time turning myself into a perfect example for people out there deaf, blind, or in a wheelchair. You should never label yourself, and you should always reach for the goals and prove to people you can still mount to something.
Moving is really tough. You've caught me at a crazy time right now, but happy to be on your show.
I appreciate it.
What you're doing is wonderful.
Thank you.
Good for you.
Okay, well, it's a normal conversation, and like I said, it's uncensored, so you can say whatever you want, or you can curse if you want to. It's pretty much whatever you want to do.
Oh, okay. What do you want to talk about?
Starting off, what can you tell me about acting? How did you get into the acting business?
Oh boy, it's interesting. I graduated in journalism in Toronto, Canada, and this was quite a few years ago, many moons ago, and there wasn't much work for Asians, especially Asian men, in the media. And in my heart, I always wanted to do show business, like hosting or acting, and more as opposed to being a hard-nosed journalist, although I really respect and appreciate that. So I took what skills I got from journalism school and trekked off to Asia. First stop was Hong Kong, and that's when I broke into the showbiz industry and managed to act in theater there, appear in commercials and print ads and stuff like that, and was also offered acting contracts with the major TV station in Hong Kong, and even singing. But I ended up settling on the hosting first because I also had a full-time job in public relations. Hosting in Hong Kong, I had an entertainment lifestyle program, was right up my alley in terms of journalism and stuff like that. But at the same time, I was still acting in theater peripherally. And then Singapore found out about me, and that's when the floodgates to show business really opened up. And I managed to really luck out and land my own entertainment news show. It was very much like Entertainment Tonight. It was called Showbiz. And I got to travel the world and interview all these major stars like George Clooney and Hugh Jackman, Halle Berry, Tom Hanks, and Tom Cruise. I emceed his press conference and gala dinner in Singapore and things like that. And in Asia, you work a lot. They max you out. So I was hosting a lot of shows, from Showbuzz to Hollywood Square, Singapore, and later on I did current affairs programs, just a whole mix of shows, and a lot of live specials like Miss Singapore Universe, film award shows. But in my heart, I still always wanted to act, and at the same time, I was acting on Mandarin sitcoms in English, or funny Mandarin, because that was the role. And acted in other comedies and dramedies and stuff like that on the side. So after a good 10-year run in Asia, I went back to Canada, still with the acting bug, still with the hosting bug, always doing two things at once, and managed to land a paranormal show in Canada called Ghostly Encounters, which was filmed and produced in Toronto. And also managed to act on various other shows, for Discovery Channel, for CBC Canada. I played a cop, I played a criminal, all kind of things. And then finally I got the chance to come to LA, moved to Los Angeles. Am I talking too long? Do you want shorter snippets?
No, you have as much time as you want.
So I finally made my way down to Los Angeles just recently. and decided to put most of my energy into the acting, because when I look at that clock, it's ticking by pretty fast. And if I don't do it now, I don't know when I'm going to do it again. So I've been concentrating on the acting now. And Los Angeles, being the jungle that it is a very tough, competitive, exciting territory. But you really are competing with the best of the best. So in order to compete, you really have to train. So I've been spending a good year or so, heavily, more than a year, in some of the top acting schools here. You know, there's drama schools, there's comedy schools, there's auditioning, cold read schools, and stuff like that. And that's what I've been concentrating a lot on. And at the same time, you know, it takes a while to find representation down here, even though I have a pretty wide, diverse and in-depth portfolio of work from Canada and Asia. You still have to go through the ropes of finding good representation, which I just found, and now I'm going out on auditions and stuff like that. So now you've caught me at a very kind of like a new chapter in my life. Hosting, I don't know, I might go back to it, or, you know, always do it on the side. But if you want to be an actor, you really have to give it 200%, so there doesn't leave much time to do the other stuff. I shot my first commercial when I got here not too long ago. That was for, ironically, Hong Kong. It was a Panadol commercial, which was their equivalent of Tylenol. Any second question? That was long. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It was perfect. Now, like I said, it is uncensored, so I'm going to ask you some hard-hitting subjects and questions, so I hope you don't mind. And the first one I'm going to ask you is, not to sound like an asshole on my part, but it may come off like that. Do you think a lot of people would hire you just because you're Asian for this part, or do you think there's a lot of stereotyping out there?
That's a good question. I think what I've learned is that if they want an Asian character, they will write specifically, we want an Asian guy. So those roles are pretty much set. It takes a lot to convince casting or the producer, director, studio, network, whatever, that, say a role was written for a Caucasian, but you say, well, I could play that role as an Asian. It takes a lot. It's almost like moving a mountain to change to that kind of setup. So the writing is crucial. If the writer writes roles for different ethnicities, then that's generally the way, you know, it'll happen. I'm not saying it can't happen the other way, in that you say, you know, there's open ethnicity roles where they welcome whatever African American, Hispanic, Asian to audition for it, and you may land it based purely on your performance and if you fit the character, look-wise, the energy, the vibe, all that kind of thing. Your second part of that question is that, is there a lot of stereotyping? Yes. Unfortunately, still. Hollywood claims that, you know, the doors of diversity are opening wider and it's changing. And I would say yes, it is. But is it in leaps and bounds? No. It's still in baby steps. I think it's really hard for Asian males, especially, just because there are so few roles written for us, and especially my type. So when you ask about stereotyping, yes. A lot of the roles for Asian guys go to martial artists, which I do not do, but maybe I should learn. Villains, which I enjoy actually playing, but a lot of times they go, you just don't look villainy and evil enough. White collar criminal, okay, but gangster, not so much. So I'm limited. That's, you know, my genes. That's the way I look. But also, the third type of Asian guys that they tend to cast a lot, and this is stereotyping, is very caricature, comical types. Sometimes that term, fresh off the boat, you know, foggy, yeah, it happens a lot here. and then often it's in comedy. We see that in The Hangover. We see that in a lot of sitcoms and stuff like that. But that's okay. I think in time there will be more roles written for guys like me. Dramatic roles, corporate type roles, diplomatic type roles, those kind of things. But also I think, and you'll talk to so many actors here in LA, is that the onus is on us to create our own content and show to Hollywood what other roles we can play and stuff like that, and hopefully things will change and become more diverse over time. Shonda Rhimes, the producer, writer, creator of Scandal, and I think it's Scandal, and Grey's Anatomy,
yes.
She said something very prolific when she said, we don't cast, we cast the world stage. The world is made up of diversity, color, and people of disabilities, and that's what they like to cast. So hopefully she represents the new age of Hollywood. But I would say, yes, there are a lot of conservative minds still in power positions, so it's limiting, it's challenging, it's tough. And if you ever break through, it's like, wow, all the power to my peers, my friends, myself.
Now here's
long-winded mood today.
Well, here's a question for you. How hard or how difficult is it between your point of view and, say, an Asian woman trying to break out? How different would that be?
This is a wonderful question, because I have one of my best friends, Jane. She's a stunning Asian woman. She gets auditions and roles way more than I do. I think casting and studios and productions are more receptive to female persons of color than male persons of color. I think that's true, particularly in the Asian realm. I think there's more diversity, there's more opportunities for African Americans and probably Hispanics. It's only recently that opportunities have opened up for Asians and South Asians now. A lot of roles for South Asians are happening ever since Slumdog Millionaire and the Mindy Project. So we'll see. I don't know. It's a state of evolution right now. But I would say, if you ask me, quantity-wise, more for Asian women than Asian guys. Yeah, for sure. Because they like the babe. It was the same as in journalism. There were more opportunities for news anchors and female Asian reporters than there were for male Asian reporters and male anchors. You always see at the news anchor desk the Caucasian lead anchor, and on the side it's either an African American, Hispanic, or an Asian female, and usually really hot. I met Connie Chung, and she spoke at a gala dinner in a Asian journalist conference, and she said the girls have been perceived as dolls or sex kittens. So that explains why there's more roles, not only in journalism, but also in hosting, but also in acting. Asian men really aren't sexualized, or, often at times I get like, oh, you're very pretty boy next door type, or I'll come in with a suit and go, oh, you're very, educated and well-spoken and intelligent, and no one's writing roles for you. Go write your own. So I would agree, yeah, there is a long way to go.
What about if you look at, say, the 80s and 90s, came a long way. You look at people like the woman from Power Rangers, Trini, she helped open the door. Lucy Liu opened the door for women. Bruce Lee, Jet Li.
Yes. But, I've interviewed Lucy Liu, Jet Li, Jackie Chan, Michelle Yeoh. I've interviewed all of them. And I think it's great. They were at the cusp. I remember specifically in the late 90s when Hollywood went to Hong Kong and started to brought a lot of the Hong Kong talent down to Hollywood. It was a short cycle, and then also Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came to life, and for a brief moment, Asians were the hot thing. But hotness in only very specific laneways, and those laneways were the Asian babe or the martial artist and the villain, the gangster mafia villain thing. So in terms of the other mainstream, which is still untapped, like The Good Wife, these legal dramas, just where are we? But there's some change. The Mentalist has an Asian lead, supporting lead, which is interesting to see. But you think about the planet of diversity, it could use so much more, not just talking from an ethnic perspective, but from disabilities and stuff like that, or abilities, as we should call them. But it's slowly changing. I mean, finally, commercials now are beginning to cast people with disabilities or interracial couples and interracial families. It seems like it's so new and novel when really it's been the way for so many decades, and we live, right? We coexist. So I don't know what's taking so long.
Do you think it's just politics, or do you think it's just ignorance?
I think it's a fear a bit. There's a great fear of the conservatism with a lot of the power players. Are like, how will this go down in the South or other markets? Okay, it's fine for New York and Los Angeles, which is very diverse, but what about those other markets? So they start number crunching, and they start doing, sometimes they'll do viewer poll testing, and often Asian guys just don't rate high. But I don't know. I think that fear factor should be put to the test. You see so many, I see so many shows and roles, and it's like, I'm scratching my head, why did they cast a person of color, or would someone of a disability play that role? But so I don't know, I think it starts sometimes, yes, with changing the studio heads and the network heads, the suits we call them, that don't be so afraid to step out of the box. But at the same time, I also think it's up to the creative people to start writing specifically for us. And there's mandates with NBC, CBS, and ABC. They have a diversity department now. They do have outlooks and of casting people of all walks of life, and this includes people with physical challenges too.
All right. Now you mentioned there's a couple of things you mentioned, but I would like to run past you. Well, there's a couple of subjects that just popped in my head that I'd like to mention.
Are you an actor?
No, I'm working on it, but didn't get too far. Don't have the money.
Tough, right?
Don't have the money for it.
Oh, isn't that funny? It's like acting is an expensive pursuit.
Well, if you know any good schools in LA, maybe you can hook me up.
Oh, there's so many. LA is the town of acting. It's like it's so normal that it's abnormal. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what city are you from?
New York.
Oh, okay. Well, New York, you have a lot of acting going on there. But if you were like in Pennsylvania or Cincinnati, acting is like so foreign, And it's like, you want to be an actor? What are you doing here for? You got to move to Los Angeles or New York. But in Los Angeles, there's like Anthony Meidel's Actor Workshop. There's Leslie Kahn for comedy. There's Margie Haber Studio for audition technique. There's Larry Moss. And then they have all those traditional schools like Lee Strasberg. Just so many, and there's so many acting teachers. Brian Reese has a studio. It's like, you could literally, well, you could Google, but you could literally bump into people, and they will always tell you, go to this school, go to this school, go to this school. There's a Ruskin Theater School in Santa Monica. Oh, so many.
All right.
But it ain't cheap.
Well, that's what it comes down to, basically. It's all about money.
Well, and talent. And persistence, and putting yourself out there, throwing caution to the wind, a lot of stuff. I would say we hear this a lot from acting coaches and casting directors at workshops. They say if acting really pulsates in your blood, don't do it. Because the odds of return are like, it's such a difficult, I don't want to say profession, it's not really a profession, it's such a difficult path to pursue with no guarantees. You could study at all the right schools and attend all the right casting workshops and network and, meet writers and stuff like this, and there is no guarantee. And even if you get your break, it could go, you may never get a follow-up, or your career could skyrocket and then plummet, or it could just be always co-star roles, small roles. Who knows? You just never, ever know. I don't know. There's no guarantee, so it's a lot of risk. I think, I don't know. It's a difficult thing. Maybe we'll do a follow-up if I make it big in a couple in a few years. I don't know how long. They say, so, what do you think now? Was it worth it? And I'll have a different, thing to say. But
what we're doing,
it won't happen in a couple of years, and I'll be talking to you again.
What we're doing right now is pretty much like acting. It's all about how you interact with someone.
Yeah, I don't know if that's acting, though. This is me.
I always thought, I watched Suits. It's funny. I always wanted to be...
There's a show I'd like to be on.
It's funny. Here's a real funny story. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a personal assistant. And the one movie that impacted my life was Almost Famous. So for the longest time, I wanted to be a personal assistant, go on tours of band and everything. And most recently, it's season 4, so about 3 years ago, I came across Suits. And I fell in love with it. I was like, I want to be an actor.
Films in Toronto, my hometown. I should go back. What did you like about Suits?
I thought it was it's good chemistry, and I thought it's... I always watch videos, and, how we're talking now, and if you watch TV, it's, I'm trying to find the words for it. I guess it's kind of easy if it's like you're talking to someone, and you have cameras around you, and they do everything. But, you're talking to someone, so it's just basically, all you have to do is talk. It's like, hey, I can do that. Sometimes I don't know when to shut up, but I know how to talk.
It's actually the art of making it look easy and the art of making it look real is actually really hard. Hosting, when you say talking, is far more easier. Like what you're doing in terms of interviewing and doing your own show, that's far easier. Because when you're acting, you really have to. First of all, you have to understand what the writer has written in terms of the character and the conflict and what's going on in the show. And that takes a lot of work, a lot of soul-searching, because you have to not only understand what the writer has written, but you have to bring yourself to that role. And I am by no means a great actor at this stage in my life, right? I'm still learning a lot. As day by day, I'm learning something new. And what I've learned, unlike hosting, which I've done a lot of, is that hosting, you have, when you say acting, that's probably more acting in terms of you have to, a persona, it's very likable or, authoritative, and it's very almost one-dimensional. And it's very intellectual driven and speech driven. Acting is different because it's emotionally driven. And that's a tough thing coming from hosting or even from my cultural background to open up emotionally and bare your soul. Maybe that's what sparked you when you watched Suits or, Almost Famous. It wasn't just the allure of fame and being on the screen and that kind of ego, massaging. It's more than that. The craft of acting is, as I'm learning, is really tough because you have to go to often dark places, difficult places. I mean, you look at almost every comedy, drama, whatever genre, it's always about conflict, right? Good guy, bad guy, villain, hero. There's always, and there's also internal conflict. I love this person, but I hate this person. I want to do this, but my heart tells me, that's wrong. There's so many things going on. And when you're dealing with external conflict with your fellow characters, or you're doing internal conflict with your own character, it's a lot of emotional wrestling. And you have to put that out there in a most honest and genuine, truthful way. Because if you're acting it, the camera picks it up. And it doesn't look real, as I've learned. So when you see a flawless performance and it looks so easy and so casual, they've done a lot of work, trust me. They've done a lot of work to get there. I mean, say a line, I don't know, I love you. I love you. I love you. There's so many different, hues of colors that you can apply, and which one is right for your character, which one is right for this scene. It's like, so that's the work of an actor. You really have to hone your craft. So it's, I don't know, when you see something on Suits that looks easy, it's probably tough. But, it's worth learning if you have a passion for it.
That's true. Just out of curiosity, are you good at video editing? Because
no. I suck at technical stuff, and it's a bad thing because everyone is becoming more self-contained. They're acting, they're writing, they're producing, they're editing their own stuff, and I'm lagging behind in that. So, I don't know, when I see Final Cut Pro, I'm like, or iMovie, I'm like, I'm still at the back store.
No, I've been using iMovie for about 20 years, so I know that easy enough.
Really? See, you have a knack for it, You're probably genetically programmed to do that stuff. I am not. I don't do martial arts. And I don't do technical editing. I'm so not Asian.
Now the reason
I'm trapped in an Asian body. No, just kidding.
The reason I asked if you're good at video editing is because I was wondering if you could tell me a little more about the difference. There's an actor, Jason David Frank, says when he videotapes, he does Hong Kong style versus American style. And not to sound, like an asshole because you're Asian and I thought you would know. No disrespect. But I just thought, I
wonder what that means. Hong Kong style versus American style. What does he mean? Does he mean because they don't use proper scripts sometimes? It's true. Jackie Chan does not use a script when he does his own movies. He ad-libs his stuff and he improvs. And he often freaks out his cast because Michelle Yeoh, who I interviewed, she goes, I never had a script when I worked on Super Gospel. I think that was a movie. But she went after I came to Hollywood. Oh, scripts. Isn't that fabulous? Proper scripts. But Jackie Chan, I'm sidetracking, but Jackie Chan, interestingly, does not know how to read Chinese. He cannot read Chinese. He can speak it, but he creates up all his lines and scenes in his head, and then he goes to shoot. Does that Hong Kong film? I don't know. I know they're more loose in terms of their filming structure sometimes. And Hollywood, it is very specific. It's very, it's charted out. I mean, it doesn't mean that they don't fly in the cuff sometimes, but, everything seems to be more regimented here and mapped out here. It's bigger here. It's more scaled out and specific. I can see why there's more loose parameters in Hong Kong because it's not as stringent. So, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
I think it's something like Americans, how their tape is, they're high in the air and you're like having bird-eye view. I think that Hong Kong is when you get on the floor of the camera and you're shooting up or something like it's something about how you make a video and about different styles.
Well, I don't know specifically from a technical perspective, but I know each certain countries have their style of filmmaking. India has theirs, and Hong Kong has its. Japan has its own style. So there's gradients of differences in terms of maybe cultural as well as geographic influences. But I'm not a direct cameraman or something like that, so I can't tell you from that perspective. So I don't know, hard to say. I mean, I'm trying to remember some of the shows I shot in acting. Was it much different? In Singapore, it wasn't different. It was very much the Hollywood style of filming sitcoms and comedies and stuff like that. So there wasn't that much difference, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3 in the studio. I don't know. Maybe if you're an action star, different. Which I am not.
I was wondering if I can get your opinion on the whole Power Ranger stereotype thing. People's like, oh, you made her be yellow because she's Asian, or you made him black because he's a black guy.
It's like the Teletubbies, right? I don't know. I think we're getting past the stage of drawing cartoon characters with squinty eyes. But come on, I don't know. I'm not that hypersensitive about some things. What can you do? I mean, sometimes I cringe when, if it's an... Okay, language is often the teller of ethnicity. I sometimes cringe when we're asked to do like a Fobby accent, or African Americans have to talk ghetto, or Hispanics have to talk street. Sometimes that rubs me the wrong way, but sometimes it's right if they're writing for that level, like socioeconomic level. I mean, if it's gangsters, could be Caucasian, could be African American, could be Asian, whatever. They have a lingo that's geared to their socioeconomic status and things like that. You aren't going to see someone speaking like on Suits or The Good Wife being in the hood. It's just not going to happen.
Would be pretty funny.
Yeah, there's gradients of differences that are understandable in terms of like you say, stereotyping. But hopefully we're getting away from it more and more. I mean, I just heard that Marvel is going to do their first Chinese superhero, finally. And it's starring Wang Li-hung, Alexander Wang from New York, who went off to Taiwan and became a huge pop star and actor. And I've interviewed him, and I'm like, great for him. That's amazing. Cast me. I'm available. No, but you see, these strides are now, walls are being broken down and things like that, which is great. Could there be more? Yeah?
Well, you brought up a good point about superheroes. What Asian superheroes do you think would branch out and become as big or bigger than, like Superman and Batman?
Oh, I don't think there is one at the moment. Geez, that's a good question. I don't know. I grew up a comic geek. There was no... I mean, Japan has their own history of comic superheroes and things like that. So maybe it'll spring from Japan or Korea. I don't know. I don't foresee in the near future Marvel or DC Comics creating an Asian superhero, you know. I mean, you look at the DC world, there was like a couple of African Americans. I forget the one. What was his character's name? You know, he had like the eye and a big machine gun on his shoulder. And Green Lantern, you went through a series of Green Lanterns, and finally there was an African American Green Lantern. I don't think that's going to change in the near future. Marvel has the odd few African American, you know, Halle Berry, Storm, and X-Men. I don't think it's going to change much unless maybe Asian writers start writing things like that. I don't know. I think it's hard. There's so many things that have to take effect for a mainstream Asian superhero. I think martial arts is probably the easiest route that it'll happen. You know, if we could roll back the clock, you could easily say any of the main characters in The Matrix could have been an Asian, right? It could happen. I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't.
Well, were you ever a fan of Dr. White? I know a lot of people say Dr. White. Oh, Mega Man. No, that's not what I mean. And Dr. White, as in the DC woman.
No, I didn't know. Okay, when I'm talking comic geek growing up, it stopped at a certain age. I didn't carry it on in my 20s. I grew up with the Justice League.
Oh, she was part of the Justice League.
But later on, not during when I was 5 or 10 or, you know. No, it was all Batman, Superman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman. The staple Flash. That's a good question. Would you like to start a campaign? We'll see what Marvel's Annihilator does in the world market. That's the Asian superhero with Alexander Wang. We'll see what that does. I think, probably martial arts, a superhero like that will probably be the first. Could be the first. You know, we've seen it with Ninja Turtles and all those kind of things. I probably have a feeling that's the way it's going to happen, if it happens.
Alright, what about, I know it's not Marvel or DC and this is its own brand, but how do you feel about a Dragon Ball Z movie? An actual good movie, not like one of those shitty ones.
Sorry, which movie?
Oh, Dragon Ball Z. You know, they did Dragon Ball Evolution, but that was a piece of shit movie. But I mean, like an
I didn't watch it. Didn't see it. Jeez. I don't know. You look at now, Godzilla's coming out. There's a huge Japanese contingent to that movie. I'll tell you what's going to change it is China. And I'm born and raised in, I'm very North American. I hate the term, banana, yellow on the outside, very white on the inside. But I think the money factor of the China market will probably have an impact more so than being politically correct and creating diverse roles. I think because of the market of China and the money value there, that's when more floodgates will open. It comes down really to money often. It really is. It's an industry. It's a show business. It's like, I remember, you read stories about how it took forever for, African American movies to hit the mainstream. I remember reading things like when Lady Sings the Blues, it was so hard to get Paramount to finish financing the movie. They had no confidence that it could sell, and it went off. It was huge, and it got 5 Oscar nominations and stuff like that. And it takes a lot of persistence. And I think, more power players on the creative side as well as the business side from a diverse pool will change that. We can't survive just with Ang Lee. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But I do think it's all about walls being broken down and stuff like that.
All right. Well, wrapping up, do you have any subjects you would like to talk about? Any funny stories you would like to share?
Well, my place is a mess. Oh, God. You see that tape cabinet behind me? I'm taking on the packing tape. Oh, I should have picked a better room to film this. Funny stories. Throw me something. Ask me something specific.
All right. Did he ever pull a prank on someone?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm pulling pranks on people all the time. Oh, jeez.
I got a funny story for you.
Okay.
We went to an Italian restaurant, and we drove in 2 cars. I was going back with my sister and my brother, and we're working in the parking lot. We're looking for the car. Where did we park? We forgot. And my sister says, "Oh, the car is right in front of you." I said, "Okay." I put my hand on the handle. And I was like, the handle feels different. No, it's cold outside. Maybe it's just me. I opened the door and I went in the back seat. Seats look a little different, but that's okay. And next thing you know, I look and I was like, why aren't they coming into the car? Did something happen to the car? And then I realized my brother's waving at me and it's like, "You're in the wrong car."
Oh! Because I have a similar story to that. Now that you brought that up. I remember I flew to Los Angeles for a press junket. Because the studios would fly us down to interview all the stars for the movies, and then we would, put them on our show and stuff like that. And I remember we were treated very well. I stayed at the Four Seasons, and if you wanted to go to town to shop, whatever, you would call up the Four Seasons limousine. So I took the limo out and I went shopping. And so when you have to go back to the hotel, you call them and they come get you. So I called and I'm waiting there and I see a limo pull up. So I go into it, clap my behind in there, and I'm like, this isn't my... Suddenly, who comes to the limousine and opens the door? Roseanne Barr. It was her limousine. And she was saying goodbye to her daughter, and meanwhile I was sitting in her limousine, so I had to get out of the car and say, "Oh, hi, Roseanne. Sorry, jet lag, mistake. My limo's behind yours." So, I just put on my foot massager. That's not my stomach. Oh, God, I have so many silly, dumb stories like that. Oh, jeez. I remember being so jet-lagged. I'd wake up from the hotel, go strolling out onto the street, and going up to the newspaper box. What day is it? Jeez. So many embarrassing moments. Going to the pharmacy with a bad cold. Before I got to the cold medicine section, turning the corner and letting out one big... over this beautiful blonde girl. I was like, oh jeez. Moments you could die from. Oh no. I was like, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I'm just sorry. She's like, oh my god, that was so gross. That was so gross. I have a million stories like that. Anyway.
All right.
I'm sorry for the mess behind me. I just moved. I'm still unpacking. I'm really a clean freak. I should have moved that. Jeez. You see, I'm trying to block it with my body, and then I realize there's a mirror showing all the mess. Jeez. Not very strategic today. But anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not acting. This is me.
Do you have anything?
In 2 years when we do the follow-up interview, you're an actor, I'm an actor.
Hopefully.
You know? We never know.
Do you have anything you want to say to your fans and listeners before we wrap up?
I have fans. I've been dormant for so long. Just thanks. Keep watching. If you're hooked on Ghostly Encounters, we had a good run. I know we have a lot of fans on that show. I don't know, it's been a while from the fans in Asia. Hello, if this goes worldwide. Hopefully I'll land some juicy acting roles soon. Anybody watching this, whether you're a person of color, whether you're not, you know, you're a regular white person, whether you're a person with a disability, or, you know, whatever, I think tenacity, talent, self-belief, faith in yourself, and opportunity, some of the cornerstones that you will need, luck, but it's not easy. And only do it if you are really passionate about it and are willing to invest time and money and energy, because it's a tough field.